Hello, Forecaster here again, and we are back for episode 30 of the Railcraft server Let's Play. But once again, I'm not on the server, I'm in one of my test worlds, because I've made a bunch of improvements and changes to the reactor fueling program. And we're going to have a look at those. I'm going to show you what it does now, live with the robot, and then we're going to have a look at the code, and I'll try to explain some of the changes I've made and how they work. And if you're not interested in that, you can click the link that will be on top of the, or at the top of the description, which will link to a time past this where we will be back on the server to continue with the farms and the track stuff. But if you're still here, we're going to have a look at the robot. So it looks the same, has the same equipment as before. In the reactor, we have 4 depleted dual fuel rods. And I'm going to start the program. Now you'll notice that the robot doesn't have any 238 in its inventory currently. It has a stack of uranium blocks, however, which are of course made out of 238. So like before, it takes the rods and they get processed. Then it gets the plutonium back. It's going to move it out of the crafting grid. And now, because it doesn't have any 238, it's going to take one of the uranium blocks and unpack it to get the 238 it needs to make the nuclear fuel. So it can now, instead of having to unpack them yourself, you can just give the blocks to the robot and it will do it for you. And one of the major changes in the program is that it can now dynamically acquire components for a recipe from another recipe if set up correctly. And this is all dynamics. It's not specific to uranium or uranium blocks. You can pretty easily adjust it to do other things as well. And pretty much like before, it will craft the MOX nuclear fuel, and it will then input it into the sorting machine, which will send it into the canning machine, which will create the actual fuel rods. Then they will come back into here, craft it into dual fuel rods, and then put back into the reactor. So we can turn that off for now. And you can see that there is a lot of output, which is not really important. It's basically for debugging and could probably be improved a lot. So there's the fuel rods. I'm not sure why it does this. That is a non-critical bug, because as you can see, it just pauses for a bit and then it does the crafting procedure anyways, and I'm not sure what is up with that, but that is part of the new multi-step crafting system, which is what it is essentially. So there it goes, and then it turns them back, and something is powering the reactor, which is a little odd. Anyway, as you can see, it worked. It got 6 uranium-238 left over, which it will use first to craft 1 piece of nuclear fuel, and then we'll unpack more blocks as necessary. So Let's have a look at the code then. So if I bring this over and we have a look here. So I've changed a number of functions and I've added a couple. One of the most notable changes might be this. Before I had one variable for each item and one variable for each recipe. Now all the recipes are contained within a single variable inside of a table, and you reference them through this table instead. So for example, passing a recipe to a craft function, you type in the name of the recipe as a key to the table and pass the contents of the value of that key to the craft function. And the reason I did that is, of course, to allow the craft function. So let's have a look at that. The craft function has grown a bit. It was pretty simple, actually, previously. But basically what it does now, with the assistance of a couple new functions, it goes through the recipe here prior to crafting anything and creates a list of components from the recipe. So, and it counts each component. So for example, for the enriching recipe, which takes 6 238 and 3 plutonium, it will create a list that contains 238 and plutonium, and it will say 6 and 3 respectively. So it knows how many of each component it needs in total. And then it will scan the inventory for these components. And with the assistance of this new function called find and count, you give it an item label or an item name, and then the second parameter is if it's internal or not. And it will go through the inventory and it will check each slot for anything that matches this label, and then count how many items it finds in each slot that matches, and then return the total out here. And then here we test how many we found. If that is less than what we need in total, so for example 238, we need 6. If we find 6 or more, we will skip this part because we have enough. If we find 5 or less, that means we don't have enough 238 to complete the recipe. So then we will go into here, and what happens now is that it will check the recipe array or table for a recipe named after the item we need. So, and it uses the label of the item. So you have to name the recipe what the actual item is called and not what you've called it up here. So you can't use 238, which is what my internal reference to that item is. I have to use this name because this is what the recipe will, or the crafting function will be looking for. So in the recipes here, I have a recipe with the key uranium-238, which tells the crafting function that it can make 238 using this recipe. And this recipe, of course, has a single item component, which is the uranium block. So then it will let's see here. It will call itself, or a new instance of this function, and pass that recipe, if it can find a valid recipe, of course, and it will perform a single crafting operation to craft the missing components. And then it's going to proceed. Now, I see a problem with this, and that is that if one operation is not enough, I think it might fail. I'm not entirely sure, though, because currently the uranium block yields 9 to 38, which is more than enough for a single operation of the enrichment recipe. And then the next operation, it will check again either way. But if it only yielded 1 to 38, then it would still not have enough. I might have to look into that and try to test, see how that would actually happens. Because I think it will only do this once. I might need to have it recheck the recount each time, and then do the crafting, loop this bit for until it has enough. Yeah. If it doesn't find a valid recipe, it will pause for 4 seconds. This is basically, I just put this in so I could catch when this happened. Could really remove that, actually. And then we'll continue, and then it will do the main recipe that we want. And of course, this will, you can nest these recipes. So for example, if we needed another recipe to make uranium blocks, we could put that in as well. And if it didn't have any uranium blocks, it will look for a way to make them, and then make them if it can, and then it will go back up and then make the 238, and then make the enriched MOX fuel. So you can iterate a lot of levels, really, as much as you have memory for, I suppose. But then it basically does what it did before. I'm having it move the item out of the output slot to a free slot. I've also changed find empty slot, how that works. What you can do is you can pass in the label of an item, that is an item name, and if you do that, it will first scan the entire inventory, internal or not, for a slot that contains that item. And if it finds one and it's not full, that is, it's not at the maximum stack size, it will select that slot instead of finding an empty one. And it will do this first before looking for an empty one. So it will scan the entire inventory looking for items of that type. And this means that instead of putting new items in an empty slot, it will put them together. So otherwise, each time it unpacks a uranium block, it would put the 238 in a new slot, and will quickly run out of inventory slots. So that's pretty significant improvement. It does slow down the program, though, because it needs to do a lot of slot iteration, which is a bit unfortunate, but it needs to do that to conserve inventory space, because it only has a single inventory upgrade in it. But yeah, so all of this is pretty much the same. The exception is the item references, you can see, look like the recipe references do. And the resume bits, which is a new feature as well. We have a variable called resume. And this is actually read from a file which is in the same path and has the same name as the current program, plus .resume, which is how what this this returns the absolute path to this file, including this file name. And I just add .resume to the end, so I get a unique file for this program. And it basically, we have it here. It basically just contains a number, a single number, and that determines where the program starts. So by default, that will be 0, as you can see here. It starts at 0. If it doesn't find this file, it will remain 0. And down here, let's close this. If resume is 0, then it will be allowed to look for the uranium rods. Otherwise, it's going to skip this bit, because remember that this line here is blocking, which means that it will stop here and then try to find this item forever until it finds it. But if it's 0, it will continue. It will do this, and then continue past this as normal. Now here we call a function called setResume. And this basically writes a 1 to this file. And then if resume, the local variable, is 1 or less, so it's 0 or 1, it will be allowed to do this bit. But then if we get here, we set this to 2 instead. So if the program shuts down after getting to this bit, it will have written a 2 here. And when the program if the program starts again, it will read that 2 into resume from the file. And then when the program gets here, resume will be 2, so it's not 0. So it will skip this block. Then it gets to here, and the variable will be 2, which is not less or equal to 1. So we'll skip this as well. And then when it gets here, resume is 2, so it is equal to or less than 2. So we'll do this crafting bit. This basically allows the program to skip the beginning bits that would otherwise prevent it from continuing, because this is blocking 2. And just continue running from approximately where it shut off. Now there are some problems. Like this should probably be in this block as well. I'm actually going to adjust that now, because otherwise the robot will turn around again, which it probably has already done. So it would be facing the wrong way. I think I experienced that. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. So let's get back to the server. And we're going to continue setting up the rails and such. Alright, so we are back. We don't have a whole lot of time left, unfortunately, because of the programming stuff, but we should be able to do some things. So I made a bunch more loaders and unloaders, and I've been placing some stuff, because you have placed more platforms as well. One neat thing I discovered about the platforms is that you can place a redstone torch into them, and you can use that to power rails or tracks that are on top of them, which is handy. As you can see, I put the moistener here, and it has It's right on top of water pipe, of course, which I had to lower to get this in. Made this a little more roomy than when the track was out here, which is a little nicer, a little slightly less messy. I haven't configured any of the loaders or unloaders really yet. So what we're going to do first is head over here, and we're going to disassemble this setup. So we have the sorting machine, which we are going to remove. Reclaim that. We'll probably use that for something else. Probably need a sorting machine eventually. And then we have a bunch of these buffers. Well, one buffer, apparently. Thought there were two, but oh well. We can remove these cables. Now, I think a chainsaw would remove them faster, but I don't have that out. It's in the backpack. We're still going to need power for the recycler, but I can probably remove this for now, because put that over there for now, because it's going to end up in a different position anyway. So I can collect this and this. So the track is back here. Let's get rid of these as well. And we're going to have it go in a straight line in like that, of course. And then we're going to have the unloaders here. And then the drawers on this level here. So we're going to need to move this. But first, I don't know if I can remove this without a wrench. Let's put this over here because we're going to need that for the recycler. We can put an unloader. Actually, well, no, I'm going to put this here. At the very end, I'm going to need a loader, which I didn't make, unfortunately, for the things like fertilizer. I think it's basically just fertilizer, really. But yeah, it's going to need a piece of dirt here. It's going to load fertilizer into the cart so that it can resupply the farms with it, of course. And we're going to need locking tracks, which I've also made a bunch of, along with a bunch of boosters as well. The boosters we're of course going to need to place as or after placing the cart so that we can test. And let's remove this for now. Now I might want to leave some room for more of these in case I need more outputs. So I'm going to put one at the very end, which for now is going to be there. And then we can, alright, track kits don't go in there. This we're going to set to always send the cart that way. And put these away there. So we're going to have a loader here and a chest or a drawer with supplies. Now let's move this. We can actually remove this first. And we're going to put it up against the unloaders. Or one of the unloaders at least. Like so. And then we can put these back inside. Like so. And then we need to move this down. This has a lot of wood in it. Actually, we can put that back in there. Pretty simple stuff, really. And then I guess we'll put... Ah, no, wait. I'm actually going to need more. One more unloader. What I'm going to do... Let's throw that stuff away for now. Oh, that's the drawer. I want that. I need one of these. Let's borrow this for now. Just so I can... Oh, dang it. Oh, that is off. Keep picking up blocks. We're going to put... Oh, wait, no. Okay. No, I was mistaken. That's perfectly fine. Well, I was mistaken now. I was originally correct. I have the drawer there for the resin already, so that's fine. Let's get rid of this for now so I can get down there. Actually, I can just turn this on, can I? There we go. Nice. Should have done that to begin with, obviously. So, what I can do then is I can take this, put it there, and then put this inside. It's going to output to the top. So it's going to output directly into this. And then we'll grab this and we'll put that underneath there. We don't need any tin cables. We just need some copper ones here. That should do. Oh. So that's what happened. Okay. Right. Now, don't really need that. So, this is going to unload resin, obviously. So we're going to filter that. And immediate is good, and all matching items is perfectly fine. So, basically it's going to keep one stack of resin inside of here. And then this is going to unload resin as well. And the order is, of course, this first will unload as many as it can into this drawer. And then it's going to unload the rest into here. And if I take this cart, or a cart here, we'll put it here for now. Put this resin inside of it. And we can actually take this stack as well. So we can test this. And we actually want to set the filters on these as well first. Otherwise, they're going to unload anything, which we don't want. So let's give this a push. this is going to fill up. Okay, so that doesn't actually work. Okay. Why isn't it sending the cart? It is on immediate. Oh, it's in lockdown mode. Right. I want holding mode. That explains it. So we want it like that. And then because there's nothing here, this is going to be held until it receives a signal, which we can provide at any time. So it, I guess the unloaders don't work with the drawers either for some reason. Also, this should be set to up, not north. To update that, so that sets that. Okay, so either I need to put chests here, or maybe they don't work with the drawers because they don't recognize them. I think there might be a limitation on the amount of slots in the inventory, and this may only have one slot or something like that, plus the upgrade slots. Not sure if they count or not. And this looks for inventories that are similar to chests. What I could do, though, is put hoppers underneath them to pull the items out and put them into the drawers. I can move the cable, then I have to put them in the floor, which is not ideal, but I guess I'll have to do that. Unless I change this a bit. I could pull in the unloaders a bit, have a hopper underneath, and then have a duct on that level and that level that outputs into the drawer, because I'm pretty sure that the ducts inputs into the drawers fine. Maybe. We can test that quickly before we end the episode, so... they don't. Okay. Right, so probably hoppers it is then. I guess. I don't want to change the level of the tracks. I could put the... I can't put the unloaders on any side of the track, but ideally would be if they were just one block up. But then I need to raise the track one block as well, which is... I can, of course, put them above the track, but then I can't put a hopper underneath, obviously, because the track is in the way. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation, but we'll come back in the next episode to implement whatever solution I decide to go with in between them. So, with that, I will see you in the next episode.